Hello. So I guess I'm just posting this video on just some raw thoughts after Stacey gave a semi-concession speech where she didn't concede to the opponent because the opponent was a rather unjust referee, an unethical referee of his own election, right? Um, and she gave a blistering speech on this. And I think that's really good, really necessary. She's rallied the base, and I think there are just some things that we need to do now, or what can we do now at this point? After the like Stacey Abrams finally said we don't have the votes at this point to force a recount or to have a runoff. Well, first thing, of course, is going to be going all into getting John Barrow elected as Secretary of State, Lenny Miller for PSE, Public Service Commissioner to seat 3, on December 4th. That it will be a lower turnout election. It's dangerous, but also I don't think it's been tried before in Georgia history. Um, because the last time we had a runoff election, it was in what was it? It was in 2008. U.S. Senate race between Saxby Chambliss, who won against Jim Martin, the Democrat, and who was from the House and wanted to run for Senate. Last time we had a statewide runoff for this election, for what was it for a statewide semi-executive office. It was for the same guy who's running against the incumbent who's running against Lenny Miller for his seat on the PSC, seat 3, Chuck Eaton. He had a runoff before in 2006, and it was against, I think, Doug or David Burgess, and he won that runoff. But you look on the Secretary of State's website, and it goes all the way back to 1992. There's no recollection of a runoff election, a runoff general election for a statewide constitutional office. I'm not including the PSC in it because it's semi-executive, semi-legislative. It's a board, basically. We're talking anywhere between governor, lieutenant governor, all the way down to agriculture commissioner and commissioner of labor. We've never had at least within the last 20 to nearly 30 years, a race for a runoff election for an executive office in the state of Georgia, ever, at least within the since 1982. And given how the Democrats were dominating back in the day, we're talking like before 1982, before Democrats really lost the plot, but also started to gain more of what they were really what ideology they were trying to go for after losing control of what was once the solid conservative, rather racist South over the 20th century. That this is a first time that it's ever happened for a constitutional office. And again, John Barrow, I have some disagreements with him. I mean, we really need to elect him, but I have some disagreements with him because I remember when he told me, it was at a one of his stumping speeches where he was stumping for, well, not stumping, he was answering questions and he was talking about his why he's running, and this is during the primary season. He was over at the UU, the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship here in Columbus, Georgia, and we had a big turnout. It was like the Working Democrats working group that Patricia Lassiter and Judy Burlett helped organize. It was on my birthday, by the way. Yay! But this was, I think that was a disappointing thing that he said, that he was not in favor of ballot initiatives. And now we look how many months later from February 5th, 2018 to November 16th, 2018. And we look back on November 7th. How many ballot initiatives won? Look at Florida, Amendment 4. Look at Colorado, Amendment A. Look at Missouri, Amendment 2 and Proposition B. How many states expanded Medicaid through ballot initiative? How many states expanded, raised the minimum wage, well, namely at least two, Missouri and Arkansas, who raised the minimum wage to over $10 an hour? How many states passed redistricting apportionment reform by referendum on November 7th? Look how many states did that. I mean, even the one in Colorado was amazing. Amendment A removed the penal exemption clause from from their equivalent, their state level equivalent of the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, the one that says slavery and involuntary servitude shall not be permitted except on the basis of being convicted of a crime. They finally struck that from their state constitution. First time they've ever done that. So many big things are happening in other states, either by election or by referendum. Even in the states where they were red and they got rid of Claire McCaskill, which sucks so much. But they passed medical marijuana, or medical or recreational marijuana legalization, and they raised the minimum wage to $11 an hour, or was it 12? Over the course of the next 5 years. That's amazing. Red states are still doing big things. But what are we doing? What are we doing here in Georgia? And that's the problem. We can't do it. We can't pass really amazing legislation by referendum because we don't have ballot initiatives here in Georgia. People, normal citizens, can't draw up petitions and gather signatures in order to put questions on the ballot for constitutional amendments or statutory law in Georgia. You can do that in Florida, but you can't do that here. So that's where I think really needs to change. And if John Barrow was not on top of that and everything, he needs to change that up real quick. He needs to be somewhat more radical and actually take control of the conversation, because the next month, now that Stacey has ruled herself out of any further attempt to try to to win the gubernatorial race, now this is going to be about John Barrow and Lenny Miller. They're going to be on the ballot. So they have to take control of the conversation. And John Barrow has to talk about gerrymandering and about redistricting reform and about reforms to our election laws. But I don't know. It's up to him. It's up to him whether he wants to win or not. He needs to win, but he needs to come up with something more than being a conservative Democrat. The conservative Democrats, where are they? Most of them just are still voting for Democrats now because their grandfather and their great grandfather voted for Democrats for all sorts of reasons, which are not the most savory. So we need reform. And I think that's what's going to be the big case in 2022 when the next gubernatorial election comes up. Stacey Abrams did a stellar job, the best job that a Democratic candidate for governor has done since Roy Barnes left office as the last Democratic governor of Georgia in 2002 and gave the keys over to Sonny Perdue. We haven't had a Democrat like this running for governor ever in Georgia history, who is solidly progressive, solidly liberal, and is not afraid of being called a socialist, because that's what Georgians and Deep South people tend to call anyone who wants to upend the status quo or reform the status quo. They do that sort of thing here. It's garbage. So we need to be more reform-minded, but not just more reform-minded going into the next gubernatorial election, or even in 2020. It's going to be state legislative this time again in 2020, and in 2022 it's like state 2-year terms for state House, state Senate. But we really need to drive home a reform message in 2020. No matter who is going to be the Democratic candidate for president, the Democrats in Georgia have to be about reform. Not just services, not just Medicaid, not just minimum wage increases, not just these things that can really happen if we ever win the governorship or win the state legislature, which is still going to be very hard to do. It's going to be hard to do because now we're a solidly a state that is divided between two ideological parties, more than it ever was over the course of Jim Crow. Now we have to be about reform in this state. And so we also need to reform our party. And what I wrote earlier, like yesterday, I wrote about how campaign Democrats, the candidates, the people who volunteer and are paid by the campaigns to do the work of trying to get people elected, they're not the same people as the party Democrats. The party Democrats, they are, I'm going to try to keep it PG or just G-rated. There needs to be a total scrub down, tossing out of a lot of people from the state on down to the county. There needs to be a whole lot of reform, because what I can admire, at least begrudgingly, about the Republicans in, outside of Metro Atlanta, is that they are very, very organized. They are very organized in the rural areas. They are organized at a granular level that the Democrats are not. You even look at the bylaws of our party, of the DPG, and compare that to the bylaws and the rules of the Georgia Republican Party. And neither of these two, it's almost night and day in terms of their organizational skills or their organizational structure. The Georgia Republican Party has more tiers going on. We're talking from state and congressional, state committee and convention, and congressional districts. But they don't just stop at county. They go all the way down to precinct. They go down to the precinct level. What does the DPG provide for? And when we talk about the local structures, it goes from state committee and state convention through congressional district committee and only to county and to the county. And what is the county supposed to do according to the bylaws and the charter of the DPG in order to determine who will be the legislative body of the county committee? They use this thing called party districts. And party districts are not the same thing as precincts. It is a rather weird formation, and I don't think it's effective. I don't think it provides Democrats with grassroots activism outside of the urban areas. And I think that sucks. So we need to reform our bylaws, and we need to reform our charter. We need to kick some people out from the county committees and all the way up to the state. Because I think that if we were more organized as a party, I think Stacey Abrams would have won. I think all of our Democrats would have won statewide office. I think they would have even won more seats in the General Assembly. We need to be much better organized than we are right now. The fact that even Stacey Abrams got this close to becoming the next governor of Georgia, the first Democrats since 2002 to be governor, that Sarah Riggs Amico could have been our next lieutenant governor, that Janice Laws could have been our insurance commissioner, Fred Swan, agriculture, Don Randolph, seat 5 on the PSC, Richard Keatley, Secretary of Labor Commissioner or Labor Secretary, Arthur Thornton, state school superintendent. All these people could have won if we were much better organized in our party, not just in our campaigns. That's my honest opinion. And the fact that we are going to live another 2 to 4 years with this schmuck named Brian Kemp, this dude who ran his own election process, I'm angry. I'm incredibly angry. And it makes me embarrassed, not just embarrassed to be a Georgian, but then I look at these other states and I wonder, should I have moved to another state already? Should I have moved to another state? I don't know. Maybe the better idea is to the longer term idea is to stay, fight, and fight for something better. Or at least that's the honorable thing to do. Oh, there it is. But just so many things that happened that moved the country forward in some way that happened at the state level and operating within the bounds of this idea called progressive federalism, where we take charge, progressives and liberals and people who want to move the country forward, they took more charge in passing legislation at the referendum and ballot initiative, where those are legal, and they're mostly out west and some in the Midwest. But here in the South, we can't. Why is that? And why is it that our own leaders, our own Democratic state legislators, are not on board even now with reforming our election process, not just for redistricting in order to give Democrats more power or more of a fighting chance in this General Assembly, but actually give the vote to the people. Give the power over legislation to the people. And we haven't done that. And our Democrats are not on board. Our leading Democrats, our Democratic legislators are not on board with reforming our election process at a constitutional level. So how can we expect to fight for a fairer fight in Georgia? And this is what the Stacey Abrams campaign is being folded into. It's being folded into an organization called Fair Fight Georgia, fairfightgeorgia.org. But if we want to have a fairer fight where we give much more of a hearing to those who want to push progressive ideas forward, push ideas that can move the state forward, we have to be much more imaginative than just redistricting reform, and give it and things that can benefit Democrats running for office. We have to think about moments where we can take the party labels out and have the people vote on these issues themselves without the partisan labels. And I gotta disagree. I mean, I just gotta say this to our minority leader, Bob Trammell. I disagree with him that going through the whole, putting every bit of legislation through the committee process is a good idea. What we have seen in this election, the Republicans still maintain a lot of power. And they're going to use that in 2020. They're going to use that, and they're going to try to screw us more. But if they screw us, if they do succeed in screwing us, why can't we have a safeguard for progressive policy and the ability to pass progressive policy? Because Democrats may never win again in Georgia for the General Assembly. We may not even deserve to win a majority in the General Assembly. But our ideas should get a better hearing than what they've gotten from Georgia for such a long time. And I'm tired of ideas that can move our state forward being held hostage by our party, by party politics, and going and just waiting for the committee process to go for things to be procedural. Just shake it up. Shake the whole system up. I guess that's a populist sort of thing. Maybe that sounds like someone who says like the whole system is bad. Let's go ahead, shake things up. But they have a point. And I'm not trying to sound like Bernie Sanders here. I'm just saying we need to shake things up, not just to allow for more Democrats to be elected or to have more party competition in Georgia, but to reform the way we vote on laws. So our Democrats need to change themselves. We need to change ourselves as a party. We need to change how we function. We need to change how we fight for laws. We can't just be an Atlanta party. We can't just be a Metro Atlanta party. I live in Columbus, and I live with a status quo that wants to stay the status quo. And people who live in these other smaller cities outside of Metro Atlanta, they live with a status quo that wants to stay the status quo. Whether it's Macon, Augusta, Savannah, Albany, Waycross, Brunswick, they're all living with that. Rome, maybe Athens, but at least they have a big college up there. They have a big university. But I'm tired of living with a status quo that views just even the process of voting as a bad thing. That should be controlled. And that's what we lived with for such a long time. That's what Black people, that's what poor white people, and that's what people of all other backgrounds that did not comport with a certain way of life, a certain look, a certain religion, a certain income level, or certain aspiration in life. That's what they lived with for centuries in Georgia and in the South. So what are we going to do to change it, to shake the whole system up, turn it upside down, and change it up? This is not through just voting for Democrats. This is bigger than our party. And Stacey Abrams, I think she realized that towards the end, that this was going to be bigger than this year. This is going to be bigger than our party, or a party winning the governorship of the state of Georgia. This is going to be bigger. And reforming and shaking things up is going to be bigger than our party. And our party, but it also starts from within our party. It starts from within the DPG itself. We need to change ourselves and get ourselves right, get our houses in order. We must change. And change the system and change how our party works. Because if we want to be democratic, in the big D, let's also be be democratic in the small d. And up until now, we haven't. So I gotta recognize Joey over in Augusta, Joey Trina. He's right. We've not been a democratic party. We've only been forced to become a bit more democratic because we've lost office. And because the people or the children of the old Democrats who ran this party that ran this whole state as a kleptocracy, that despised Black people and despised poor white people just enough to still retain them as labor at the cheapest possible level. The state has not changed that much. Only except through judicial and federal intervention. So we need to shake things up. We need to shake things up about our way our ways of life as Democrats and as Georgians. So I hope that anyone who watched that video of Stacey Abrams semi-conceding, saying that I don't have any more wiggle room in the legal process to count these votes, any more votes, and I recognize that Brian Kemp will be the next governor, but I do not congratulate him, I do not endorse him, and I do not wish his governorship well. Good. That is perhaps the best going out that a Democratic candidate for governor has ever done in the state's history. And the fact that it was so necessary is a freaking travesty. It sucks. So we need to fight, not just for the right to vote, but for our party to be more democratic and to recognize that it is only through the legitimacy conferred by the people and of the people and for the people that we can even begin to call ourselves a Democratic Party. It's not done. None of this is done. It didn't end with Primus King winning in King versus Chapman, ending the white primary in Georgia. It didn't end with in Gray versus Sanders, which ended the county unit system in Georgia. We must change our very way of life as Southerners, Georgians, and Democrats. And we need to be a party of ideas, progressive ideas, beyond just services. It cannot be limited to services. It has to be about wholesale reform. And if a lot of our Democrats don't like it, they need to go. They need to be primaried. And they need to be forced out of office in 2020. I am not playing at this point. I am serious, like life and death, because this is a life and death issue. Our legislators who are not on board with reform of our party and our state government, and how it functions, how both of them function, they need to get out of office. They need to get out of office and find another job. I'm sick of this bullcrap. So this is why I'm doing this video. I'm just trying to get these raw thoughts out and everything. I know it's almost 30 minutes. But yeah, anyone who's in our party who's on board with changing the structure of our party and the structure of our government needs to go. Get out. You who stand in the way of our party changing its very structure in order to become a grassroots organization, you don't have a role to play in this party anymore. Just vote for the candidates, but please don't try to operate us anymore. Especially a lot of our own party apparatchiks. And I have names. I'm not going to say any names because I'm not going to try to burn any bridges, but if you're not on board with reforming our party and reforming our state at the same time, just don't be our chairs. Don't be our secretaries. Don't be our leaders. Don't. You'll just be in the way. You'll just be in the way. And you still won't get Medicaid expansion or minimum wage increases, and the hospitals in the rural areas will still close, and children will still be dying. Our infant mortality rate will still be an embarrassment among all the 50 states. Our education level will still suck. Our housing crisis will continue to be unsolved. Our gerrymandering will continue to get worse and more egregious, and cause more violence to the ability to vote in this state. Even as more people move in, that's not destiny. Demographics are not destiny. So stop. We need to reform our party and reform our state. Turn the whole thing upside down. I'm so angry. I'm angry enough that I stay in this state and I want it to change. And I say all this in love for Stacey Abrams and for all the Democrats who ran for office this year. And I say this in love for even the people, in love for the people who do run the party. I just say, if you're standing in the way of reforming our state and reforming our party, you've got to go. You're useless to our party and the roles that you occupy. This goes beyond voting. This is talking about looking at the best practices that have been done in other states. Best practices. Learning from states like California and Colorado and Florida, and learning from Virginia, and learning from other states beyond just campaign structures, but party structures too. And also, what are they doing in these Western states that is making life better for the people who live there? Yes, they have their problems, and they got a climate change crisis and wildfires and crap, but they have a state that respects them. And we have a state that hates us. We have a state that freaking hates our guts because we want a government that actually works for us. And not a state that only privileges the rich and the wealthy, and the pious, and the corrupt. Why can't we have nice things? I think it starts with us. I think our party is not where it should be. And I think that might be the reason why. We need to be where we need to be. And I think when we are where we need to be, when we make the changes that are needed to make our party a grassroots party, not just in campaign structure, but in party structure, where we involve more people in the decision-making process of our party, then we change our state. We change our whole state. 2016 should have been a wake-up call. This should be more of a wake-up call. Don't rest on your laurels. Fight. Fight for reform of our party, of the DPG. And get the people out who do not need to be there. Move the people out who have failed our party. Because I believe that they also resulted in Stacey not being able to win. Clean house. And when we clean house, we also need to start following Robert's Rules of Order much more often. And make our party grassroots. Build up precinct committee officers. What about that? What about providing for resolutions in our bylaws? What about reform of our state convention? What about reform of how you run campaigns? How about these changes that we need? And then let's talk about fighting for reform of our state constitution and our whole government, whole system of government in this state. This is not a full republic. It should be a better republic for the people, for all the people of Georgia, not just for the people who own homes and are white and are rich and have a certain amount of income. It needs to change. I'm sorry. Gosh, we must change this party, and then we must change the state. So that's it. Leave your comments, please. Thank you. But I feel everyone who's like feeling what they're feeling right now about Stacey losing. But we must change our party and come out stronger in 2020. Thank you.